that.
Good, I'm glad they saved the feedback.
Can't do this anymore.
Got it. So,
You got it? Okay, so it should be up. Alright, so I guess we're doing that then.
so I'll leave it up to you. Because it would take a lot of
Yeah, I know. But I'm just going to quickly mention the Treasurer, Secretary, and the Content Director positions really quickly. Well, I need to get to Lee's bio, but I can't because our meetup is down. I'm not sure why. Maybe it's because I'm live streaming right now.
Let me take a look, see if I can get to it from the app.
Like it says I have good health on the live stream, but...
There you go. Want to read it off that?
Yeah, that'd be perfect. Yeah, for some reason I can't get to it. Maybe because I'm using...
Maybe clear cache or something? And you rebooted the machine?
Alright, so...
Oh, it's because you're streaming, that's probably... No,
yeah, but I changed the...
No. You don't stream from the meetup. You're streaming through...
No. I have a description on it.
Yeah, but I have it right here.
No, I know, because I can use that. It's just I also wanted to see if I can get to Google Drive, but things are just going a little bit slowly. Mic check 1 2, mic check. Okay, so we have a long delay here. Okay, let's go ahead and get started then.
Alright, just let me know when you want this up.
I'll take it right now.
Okay.
Actually, just leave
If it goes to MD, it'll watch. Sorry.
Okay, just...
I'll unlock it when you're ready.
Yeah.
I got it.
Okay. Alright guys, welcome to the CyberDef Dojo, our edition in the month of May. I can't really see myself on here because the stream has a 30-second delay, but for those of you who are joining us on the live stream, thank you for joining us. Before we get started with our main speaker today on the topic that's right behind me, I do want to make a quick announcement. The CyberDef Dojo, like I said before, is going nonprofit this year, and we are building up a board, and we also need help. So we're looking for 3 specific positions. We're looking for a content director, someone who's going to be able to help us with social media, updating the website, writing blogs, etc., etc. We also need a secretary, someone who's going to have, who will be on the board for the CyberDef Dojo, and they will have influence on some of the decisions that will be made, as well as take business meeting notes and minutes, and also be able to present that to the rest of the community so you guys know what's going on. We're also looking for a treasurer. So this person is going to be in charge of the money of the CyberDef Dojo, and they're going to be in charge of the taxes and a lot of the important stuff that's going to keep us afloat for a lot of the things that we want to do in the future. So if any of these things are interesting to you and you want to help out, and you want to put this on your resume and be like, hey, I did something, as opposed to staying at home and playing Overwatch, which by the way is a perfectly fine thing to do if you're into that. I don't recommend it. Feel free to let us know. You can email me at cyberdefdojo@gmail.com, and we'll be able to have the conversation there. I've already had a couple volunteers for some positions, so please feel free to let me know. We're probably going to cut off submissions until about maybe 2 weeks from now. Let's go ahead and get started with today's speaker. I do want to make a really quick introduction for him. So, Jeff? What's that? Introduce everybody?
Yeah. Okay, don't.
There's a lot of people here. Who here has been your first time here at the CyberDef Dojo? Raise your hand.
Wow.
All right, very cool. Well, thank you all for coming. You've been here before.
I don't remember.
You remember.
You were really drunk at the time.
That's right. That's this location. So, welcome to the CyberDef Dojo. So for those of you who don't know, CyberDef Dojo is a meetup in an organization that's dedicated to developing cybersecurity communities, and we do that by holding events such as these, the meetups, also special events like the Security Engagement Series, which is geared towards small to medium businesses, nonprofits, and startups, to educate them on security topics that relate directly to them and offer them actionable intelligence so the next day they can start implementing that intelligence and increase their security standpoint. We also have a couple of workshops that we do, such as the Red Team Blue Team workshop in the month of April. We had like a CSSP workshop thing that was co-sponsored with somebody else.
Yes.
So we try to do as much as we can with the resources that we have. And if we have a larger team, we can definitely do a lot more.
And we're still looking for sponsors. We have our first one.
Yes, we are sponsored by Alamo ISSA. Who here is an Alamo ISSA member? Awesome. Thank you guys for being members of the Alamo ISSA. I am one as well. If you want to learn more about it, please check out Alamo ISSA online. There's a thing called the internet. You can do a Google search. It's really cool. You can see a lot of cool things on the internet. Also, we're sponsored by Secure Logics, which is offering this wonderful space, the food, the water. Let's give a round of applause to Alamo ISSA and Secure Logics for sponsoring us. We're also sponsored by Def Logics, O'Reilly, Coda, Geekdom. We have a lot of community support, and that's what kind of keeps us afloat, and that helps us bring all you guys here together, and it's really great that you're all here. Any questions about CyberDef Dojo or anything like that so far? Good. All right, so let me go ahead and introduce who you are. Yeah. Jeff, if my head wasn't attached to my shoulders, I'd be dead. I'd just be straight up dead here. Yeah, that's kind of the definition. Right. Yeah, I know. There needs to be blood flow and air going up to here to be able to process certain things. It's like taking off an air cooler from a CPU. Like, yeah, watching the flames rise. Yeah, don't even use that pun. Use that. This is David Novogrodsky, everybody. We'll be here all week. All right,
Two shows on Sunday.
Yes, on Sunday. My name is Omar Kimbaya. I am the founder, organizer, and now president of the CyberDef Dojo. My co-conspirators include, thank you, David, we'll be here all week. Co-conspirators include Stephen Johns, right over there, Rob Dodson, right over there, and Jeff Rich over here. And my wife is right there. She helped as the model for us to position the camera. Thank you, Becky. You're the most important part of all of this. All right. Now, to introduce our speaker. I'm good, right?
Good.
Excellent. Now to introduce our speaker. Lee Sutterfield is the CEO of Secure Logics, so this is actually a really great opportunity for him to come by and to meet all of you and to be part of this community and to share what they do here at Secure Logics. How many of you guys know what they do here at this company? Well, today's going to be a super great treat for you all. Because what they do is really interesting, and it's not something that you hear a lot about. So he's been within the industry for about over 30 years in communication network security and management. He's worked in network vulnerability and protection for the Department of Defense, the U.S. Air Force, and the intelligence community. Prior to Secure Logics, he was the co-founder and executive vice president of the Wheel Group Corporation before Cisco acquired it in 1998. How many of you all familiar with Wheel Group?
If you're old, you know.
Yeah. So, I can't stress this enough, the importance of Wheel Group is to the rest of San Antonio. And I don't want to kind of embarrass anyone who's a part of that. But let's just say that it was the beginning of what we have today here in terms of the tech industry, in terms of the security industry. This wouldn't be here, essentially, if it weren't for Wheel Group. So, it's a really interesting history. I suggest you guys ask questions about it after the presentation if Lee wants to take questions. But without further ado, Lee Sutterfield.
Thanks a lot for everybody coming out tonight. The intent here this evening was for Mark Collier, our Chief Technology Officer, to give you this overview. He's on the road, got called up. I had to go back up to DC to meet with Homeland Security folks on some of the stuff you're going to see me talk a little bit about here. The intention today is for this just to provide you a very high-level overview of the voice security discipline. We sometimes refer to it as the real-time media security discipline, because it can involve things other than voice. But the reality is, in the market right now, there is a need to solve voice security issues And so that's what we've been focused on. But there's a lot of related technology issues that are coming down the pike in the next several years related to real-time media in general. I will also, Mark has asked me to let it be known that we are expanding our research team in this arena. We are looking for just a couple of folks in the next several months to help do some of this work. So I just want to say that up front, so if you have any interest in this area or any background that you might feel is useful, or if you know someone who does, knowing there aren't many people here probably who know that much about the voice security discipline, you guys are focusing on other areas, but let folks know that we are trying to find some folks to help us with this work. A little bit of background about SecureLogix. I was involved in a company called Wheel Group Corporation a number of years ago, actually many years ago now. We sold it to Cisco in March of '98. And what Wheel Group was about is it was the first technology company that put an intrusion detection system product on the market. Fully remotely managed intrusion detection capability. That discipline evolved into the intrusion prevention technology space. That product, over the course of the years, sold very well for Cisco systems. That was the Cisco IPS for many years. They dropped the NetRanger name, which I thought was very uncool, but it was a great name. People remembered it. But that Cisco product line is still, you know, a viable part of their security program today. So that came out of San Antonio. And a great deal of that experience base that technology grew out of came out of the Air Force Information Warfare Center, and some things are going. Is there anybody in here from the Air Force program? Just a couple of folks? Okay. Just for the record, that's still the largest computer emergency response team on the planet. My understanding is I think they still have about 100 billets, 100 positions there, contractor and government, that run the Air Force Computer Emergency Response Team. That was the third such organization of its type. There were three that started as a result of the Morris Worm way back when. The AFCERT was the first one that had an operational charter to do computer security for a large enterprise. Okay? And what we did down there was we pioneered the concepts of deployment of a technology base out in the growing network environment, which back in the mid-'80s, it was growing very rapidly from all ends, from LAN environments to WAN environments, and everything was changing very rapidly. And everyone was interconnecting everything very rapidly, and no one knew what was going on when it came to the security posture of any given system at any given moment. I mean, it was truly a Wild West environment. Now, I bring that up because the model that was pioneered by the Air Force back then, this idea of having a technology base that one can deploy, right, pull in a lot of information, see that information, and make decisions about what you're seeing, and ultimately enforce policy on that network connection or wherever it happens to be. That model back then was brand spanking new. No one had ever done that. For you San Antonioites, that technology and that construct, that operational structure for cybersecurity was pioneered here in San Antonio. And you'll see all kinds of people in computer security companies around town, from Denon Group, SecureLogix, Digital Defense, and a whole bunch of other folks who came from that experience base. Now that model of enterprise-wide, real-time visibility and control as a concept pioneered here in San Antonio. The first product line on the market to attempt to do that in some scale was NetRanger from Wheel Group. Cisco bought that. And then Cisco, in the next several years, attempted to expand that concept. In all candor, I don't think they did a great job of that. But that basic model of deployment of a capability that provides you visibility and policy enforcement control on the network itself was something that has driven the technology base that's out there today, from firewall technologies at all levels, packet level, application layer stuff, all of that stuff that has been deployed in the traditional cybersecurity arena, in the data network side, has really followed that model. And I don't know if you've seen some of the latest structured internet, heard of Tetration 2.0? That's Cisco's latest offering. I bring up Cisco a lot, not that they're the end-all and be-all, but they are renewing their investment in the security market and the security discipline. And their latest offering, they're calling Tetration 2.0. And for any of you mathematicians out there know what the word tetration means, it's kind of an interesting concept. But their basic model is, within their 9,000 series platforms, they now provide a wireline capture of every piece of data that's going over that platform is retrievable into a central repository along with a whole host of other things, and drawing upon metadata opportunities from other sources in real time to provide a level of security, visibility, and control, to use an old phrase that we used back in the day, that really has not been embraced yet by the larger market. And other folks are doing similar things, but Cisco in particular has been putting a big launch on that. I encourage you to go out and see some of the videos that they have about their Tetration 2.0 offering set. Conceptually, it's really interesting stuff. 2 points. One, that construct was pioneered here in San Antonio, in your hometown. But it is also the model that we're pursuing in the voice arena. That same idea of having an ability to have real-time visibility on behaviors, enterprise-wide, real-time, with a policy enforcement mechanism that is distributed and highly robust, is basically the only way you're going to solve a lot of the issues, especially associated with real-time media, voice environments. So you're going to hear, I'm going to talk very briefly, give you a quick overview of some concepts. Everyone's familiar with data denial of service. In the telephony world, there is a term, telephony denial of service. The implications are exactly the same. For example, in contact centers, where all of you likely have some interaction with your bank at some point, or some service somewhere, you end up, after doing your web stuff, decide you have to talk to a human being to get some work done, to get something done with your account or whatever, and you make a phone call. And when you make a phone call into that contact center, it costs them, here's just some data points, about on average $4.50 to process your call. If you call through into an IVR system, and if you get to an actual analyst, someone, a human being to speak, the costs of course go up as you go, and if you get to that analyst, that just costs them about $4.50 each. And of course, that process, the use of that voice connection, is increasingly of value to the hacker community to do lots of different things, because a lot of you folks, in fact, let me ask you a real quick question. How many of you are actually being paid to do cybersecurity stuff these days? This is your actual job. Excellent. Well, it's going to continue to grow. It's a mess, right? Still, with all the things that we try to do. But an interesting comparison here is, with all of the very powerful security things that we're doing on a data network environment, the voice world has a lot less than that. And yet the problem set is very, very similar in many ways. We'll talk about why that's the case. You've heard a lot of discussion about robocalls, social engineering, bomb threats. Anybody see all the news last year about bomb threats in high schools? Shutting junior high schools and high schools down, especially on the East Coast. And it's costing people a fortune. And the reality is, if you call in a bomb threat to a school, they are obligated to evacuate the school. It's an immediate response that they have to undertake. And so how do you deal with something like that and the costs involved? This year doesn't seem to be quite as bad, but if it starts again, it's going to cost a lot of people a lot of money. again, things perpetrated over the voice network. So this is what SecureLogix does. We have a product line that does this. At a very high level, here's an attempt to try at least kind of give you a little bit of a graphical representation of some of the way we tend to view the vulnerabilities that we deal with in the voice world. This is a half dozen of them. There's about a dozen vulnerabilities that we tend to deal with. But these are some of the ones that you're hearing a great deal about. The rise of robocalls and all the various scams. Have you heard of the Irs Scam? And the payday loan scam and hospitals. It's becoming a really difficult thing to deal with. Account takeover in the financial world, collecting denial of service, harassing calls. It's amazing how many of our customers come to us because of the executive staff or a particular operational group inside an organization that, let's say, they're doing some research work with animals and PETA doesn't like them very much. You'll get a great deal of this activity perpetrated over the phone lines, which you wouldn't think is that big a deal, but it costs a lot of time and effort and money. Because there's many times legal obligations that you have to follow through on certain kinds of calls. I think you've heard recently some of the stories with 911 that recently happened. I think it was in Seattle was one of them. But essentially, here's what's going on. You have your classic data network world, and there's a structure of a technology base with which to deal with some of that unauthorized activity. It occurs at the application layer and at the network layer in various places inside the data network world. But, and I'll make this point, even before SIP, before voice over IP, the interconnectivity between your legacy voice, time division multiplexing world, the legacy TDM world, the interconnectivity between these two networks was and still is extensive through just modem connections alone. The number of modem connections that are still out there is kind of mind-boggling. That's how we got our start as a company. It was providing a mechanism to prevent modem connectivity, providing access into the internal data network environment from airlines. That's our first, we did about $50 million plus worth of business over the year, in the early years with a number of customers just dealing with that issue. But what's happened with the advent of your voice over IP environments, and clearly SIP as a protocol has won out there, is that your legacy voice infrastructure is as much of a target now, technologically speaking, as anything on the data network. And there's very little protection out there. The ideas of these technologies providing protection at this connection on the SIP connection is not something that is widely embraced in the market. That's what we do. We have the equivalent of these kind of technologies that play in the SIP world. There's, I won't go through all of this, but there are lots of articles and warnings published by various organizations in the telecommunications world, Homeland Security, and other organizations that are speaking in very specific terms about the kinds of attacks that are occurring against organizations. It's costing a lot of money. It's actually cost lives in the 911 world, some of which you've recently heard about. Here's one that got some recent press. I think this is March of this year. The night the zombie smartphones took down 911. And I won't go into all the details, but essentially there was an exploit on cell phones that was enabling these phones to repeatedly call into a 911 line, and as soon as it got an answer, then it would hang up. And it resulted in a telephony denial of service of an actual facility that caused a lot of issues. You also had a similar event that happened up in Dallas, and I don't know if you, I believe it was a child under 5 years old that actually died as a result of this. It was a big investigation, trying to figure out what really happened. So, as an example, the 911 infrastructure that's out there, let's talk briefly about that. The 911 world, as an infrastructure support function socially, is a lot of different fiefdoms that are all locally funded, locally regulated. There is attempt to nationally regulate more and more of that kind of stuff and establish some standards, but still, it's very much a local problem set. So you'll have, and a lot of this infrastructure for 911 that people have really grown to rely upon for a lot of emergency communications is pretty old stuff. And there's a big movement on trying to move it to the next generation, 911. But what's interesting about that is the next generation, they want to take advantage of a lot of the very sophisticated technology things that we can now pull together, like location and things like that associated with a 911 call. But all of that is done in the wide world of the protocol environment generally in the next generation, which creates, again, another whole long list of issues for that environment that requires a technology base with which to deal with that, very similar to what you have in the data world. Voice IPS, voice intrusion prevention system, voice firewall technology, things like that. So, I want to briefly talk a little bit about what some of these things are. Telephony denial of service is getting a lot of press, in large part because it is an area that can cost an organization a great deal of money. And a lot of the emphasis on this came out of the contact center market. Again, every call you put into a contact center costs that organization a great deal of time and effort and money to support every one of those calls. And of course, we know that if you call in to get some work done associated with some of your accounts, what's the first thing that they want to do? Go through some kind of process to try and authenticate that you are the person authorized to conduct some activity with that particular account. So they ask you a series of questions. You know, what was the name of your first puppy? You know, and all these other kind of things. Well, you'd be amazed at the expense associated with that. Not only do you as a customer get kind of tired of going through that all the time, especially if they hand you off to another person inside the bank and they ask you another set of questions and another one. And of course, you know, hopefully you feel a little good that they're trying to be secure, but at the same time it's like, I only had one puppy, you know, I've only got one name, keep asking me. So that dynamic from a customer satisfaction perspective is becoming a really big issue. People are just getting tired of it. Also, it doesn't work very well anymore. It's amazing how many people now know what the name of my first puppy was, because it's out there. So the kinds of traditional security things that you do in the voice world to try and authenticate some activity is just not nearly as reliable and easy to do as it used to be. So, simple automated DDoS basically is a very straightforward repeated calling into an environment, usually from a single SIP origination number. Generally, the simple automated DDoS, which can be very effective, it can have a big impact on the operation without spoofing numbers. We'll talk about spoofing numbers here in a little bit. But because of the SIP world, it's incredibly easy to spoof phone numbers now. To call someone and literally appear, you know, that's like I call into my bank, one of the first things they say is, you know, Mr. Sutterfield, like, see, you're calling from an authorized phone number. Yes, I am. I hope somebody else isn't, because it's very easy to spoof my phone number. Right? So, the basic simple TDOS structure to an attack is widely is a wide concern in the market, and that's been the method that they've used for some time. But in recent years, we're seeing a larger number, not really a huge number yet, but there's a larger number of what we classify as complex automated DDoS, which essentially involves a number of sophisticated things, generally from a single number source, but you also will see them spoofing numbers in a complex environment. They also get more sophisticated when it comes to dwelling within the IVR environment itself, and or working over a longer period of time to try and get access to an analyst or a customer interface person, to also work some social engineering stuff, which we'll talk briefly about. But you can do this without wanting to do any kind of social engineering stuff. The whole purpose is just simply impact the organization. Several years ago, in fact, maybe we have a number of years ago, it was interesting, there was an organization that did ratings, financial ratings of debt, and they had done given a very low debt rating on the country of Portugal. I don't know if you remember that, it's quite a few years ago. And this particular analyst group that gives this ratings had downgraded Portugal in their general debt levels from a AAA to a single A or something like that. And they had an internal security group that did a lot of monitoring of people's discussion about them as an organization, their reputation. You can subscribe to reputation services as a company. And in the course of that effort, their team had discovered on social media, and this is early Facebook days, but they had discovered an effort by some citizens, Portugal citizens, who were pretty upset about this downgrading of Portuguese government debt, of all things. And they organized an effort to attack the organization's contact center. It wasn't a really big contact center, but they organized a social network effort to, on Monday morning, call this 800 number and we'll take down their contact center, and it's going to cost them a lot of money. And so this organization saw this social media organization dialogue on a Wednesday or a Thursday, and they called one of their technology providers, I think it was Cisco, who we have a partnership with them, and they said, well, there's only one company that addresses these things, it's SecureLogix in San Antonio, and so they set up a call with them, and literally, we deployed our technology into their London office, and I forget where, maybe it was the New York office and their London office, over the course of that weekend, and gathered a lot of data. We pulled in a lot of information during that time to kind of set up a base. And we were all set up in our little knock downstairs, coordinating with their internal team that dealt with these things to see if, in case they were attacked, if we could in fact thwart the attack. And sure enough, it started at, I think it was 8 o'clock local Portuguese time, was when they had organized people, and they got hit. And we were systematically detecting those calls through a series of things that we do that were clearly the bogus calls, and blocking them in real time. And the bad guys, perpetrators, were on Facebook, coordinated with each other, saying, hey, I'm getting constant busy signals, keep calling, because we're clearly having an effect. We've taken down their contact center. And the truth was, they had no impact on their operations whatsoever. We, had the list of all the calls that we were blocking as they were coming in. And of course, no one said anything, on social media that, you're not having an effect. Everybody just kind of pretended like it was having an effect, and it lasted for that full day. No impact to business operations. Nobody said anything about that, but the bad guys went away thinking that they had an effect. That would have cost them, I forgot, I don't want to throw the number out. They calculated the cost had all those calls gotten through, and for them it was a significant amount of money. So that deployment effort more than paid for itself. So that's just one of the types of, in fact, that was really more of a distributed, complex effort. And of course, nowadays you can make that far more sophisticated using botnets and spoof numbers. Yes.
So are these attempts at either exploitation or attack predominantly volumetric, and with the flexibility of SIP and related protocols, which allows one to spoof the ANI, spoof the route, or take a non-preferred route for other reasons, do you see other types of exploitation besides volumetric? And with that, with the loss of direct information about the source because of more flexible protocols and packaging, do you see reductions in the ability to conduct counter C2 and to better back down the resources you're protecting or the mission you're serving?
Absolutely. When they get, like, the service we offer deals with simple Ddos pretty effectively. People buy our stuff because we do that well. But as soon as you start getting into the world of really organized, distributed, automated, spoofed numbers, there's only so much we can do with that. And in fact, that's one of the big scenarios that we're doing a great deal of research on with the Department of Homeland Security. We'll talk briefly about at the end here. DHS has their SNT, Science and Technology fund, that they have set aside a considerable amount of money in the cybersecurity arena. And one of those disciplines is associated with the voice probe. So we haven't gotten some of that money, so we're building a research team. A couple of the folks that are operating on that team are here, can answer some questions for you about that. But basically, this is one of the biggest issues that we want to solve. It turns out it's, we think, quite solvable, but it will require a great deal of work with the carriers. It's a long, complex political story about why the carriers do some of the things that they do. Legally, there's laws out there that makes it difficult to solve some of these problems up front, but that's part of what we're working on in our research effort, is to solve those issues. Now, classic Ddos, telephony denial of service, in whatever form it comes in, it's a, by inference, by definition, it's a volumetric gate. In other words, they might be attacking a particular service associated with the contact center. Like, we have seen banks where their card service center, just the service associated with getting new cards and stuff, they target those particular phone numbers for some hot time period to affect those operations. And yet, the contact center also serves other functions that may not have been placed under attack. So it comes in a lot of different flavors. One of the goals of this I'm sorry, there were several slides I thought I was going to take out of this. But in the arena of calling into contact centers to commit fraud on particular accounts, that's interesting too, is that you can have a set of telephony denial of service kinds of attacks that are occurring taking volume away, while you also have folks who are using that as a distraction and conducting other social engineering kinds of attacks that are targeting actual fraud inside, inside a bank in particular. Banks are dealing with this in a really big way. Did I answer your question?
To an extent, I don't go into great depth after.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, in fact, that's one of the other classes of illegal activities is the actual fraud activity. Whether they're using spoofed numbers or just dialing in claiming to be someone who they didn't do the security checks because they emailed some personal information about them. Classic social engineering techniques are still widely used, very, very popular. They'll go through the IVR, give you an analyst, ask one or two little questions based on some information they already have about your particular identity, back out, come back in later. We have some recordings that I listen to. We have analysts that do a lot of this work professionally. And we had one event a while back where we had, in real time, we recorded calls from customers. It's part of the security mechanism that you have to potentially call people depending on how you want to use it. But we had captured some recorded calls, and for some reason, one of our analysts, when they were listening to one of them, it started out kind of like normal. You would think it was a normal customer. There was a little bit of background noise, dogs barking, obviously in the kitchen or something. His wife was there talking. For some reason, our analysts, I was really kind of blown away by this. When they first started listening to it, he sounded really suspicious and didn't really know why. And he listened longer than he normally would have. And as the conversation went on, about 30 seconds into it, anybody else would have just moved to something else. This was a call that people had asked us to do some analysis on. I listened to the call myself. The whole thing was like 12 minutes long. And towards the end, you could tell this guy was really vicious. He was doing a major fraud effort there. But I don't know why our guy initially listened all the way through it. I would never listen past it if I listened past it. The point being is that the level of sophistication for a lot of this activity is really significant. Very, very organized, very good. There was a ring in India that was broken up a couple of years ago that had 750 people who were systematically perpetrating this kind of activity against U.S. organizations. And they went in with a mass arrest and shut them down. But that kind of thing is very, very lucrative, and there's a great deal of it that goes on. I guess the point here is, if you're in the cybersecurity arena and there's any interest at all in these kinds of problem sets, the market is in fact manifesting in a pretty big way. It continues to grow. Our business is doing good these days. Although, in all candor, for many years, we were kind of a lone voice out there. But it's starting to become a factor. Let's see. One of the biggest issues that we're looking to try and solve is the issue of spoofing. And we're in a research project with Verizon, and also in working closely with AT&T and helping to solve this. Robocalls, I assume, I don't know, I get at least 10 a day around lunchtime in the evenings. There's a lot of free services out there like Haya and some of the others that offer some relief. You can download the app and try and deal with that. But the reality is, it's really hard to do no matter what app you're running on your phone. It's just kind of a continuous thing. And this is another area of research that we're doing with the carriers is we think that the real solution here lies in a very different path than what some of the robocall companies that are out there. There's some, and there's a number of them doing some support, like Nextcaller, Haya, White Pages, if you're familiar with. They have a broad base of services. Haya is one of their spin-offs. AT&T is offering, I think, Haya as a service to help mitigate this issue. But we think the problem is just going to continue to grow. There's not a really good solution set out there. We're very excited about some of the research that we're doing. It sounds like you have some background in this arena. I'd love to talk to you about your areas of interest in this world, because this is like in the early days that email used to be, and as we've controlled email and some of the other things, this just continues to grow, which I guess is a good thing for us. Are addressing the solution. I mentioned bomb threats earlier. Basically, this speaks to this. Have you all heard of any of this kind of activity in the state of Texas? Heard this? There was a little bit up in Dallas a while back, but it never really took hold. But a lot of this has been on the East Coast, and that was ultimately attributed to the Russians again. But it looks like it really was, in fact, a Russian organization, hacking group, that was doing this, and they were attempting to, hold schools for ransom. It's unclear how many schools actually paid. I don't think a lot of them did, but we have sold our technology to a company up in Massachusetts that is using it to mitigate this dynamic for a number of school districts. So far, it's a hard problem to solve. We don't solve it directly, but the way he's using the technology seems to be offering some real relief. But this is another one of those weird dynamics off the voice network that you would think was I mentioned harassing callers again. This is a source of a great deal of frustration for a lot of organizations, executive staff in particular, and it's really easy, increasingly easy, to grab tools off the internet to automate harassing calls into any particular phone number that you want to go after, and just call them nonstop. And so we've been very surprised. We have an ability to block any kind of call based on any kind of parameter that you want to do at any time. But an awful lot of the big organizations that buy our stuff use this to cut back on harassing calls, many times with their executive staff or other particular business groups inside the organization that are particular targets for people who are angry. It runs the gamut. I mean, we actually have one of our customers who has a whole program inside the organization that is there to support employees who have troubles with ex-spouses, boyfriends and girlfriends and whatnot that are harassing them by calling their boss and them all day long. They're setting up automatic dials to just dial their phone on their desk. It's constantly. It's really kind of amazing how much of that kind of activity goes on. So some of our customers have set up small little operations where people can send in a number through a little bit of a validation process there and add it to a blacklist so that harassing call no longer occurs. And it's amazing how much people are willing to pay for that relief from a business perspective. This was an actual communique that was put out by an organization that was offering, they called themselves the Evacuation Squad, and they were offering for a fee, they were willing to basically send in automated bomb threats to your organization of your choice. It's targeted largely at schools, but you look here, they gave the service away for free for a while, and then they were going to start charging so many dollars per call, paid for by Bitcoin, of course. That was an interesting finding. We don't know if this was the group that was actually involved, but we do think they were involved in some of the northeastern bomb threat activity, but we don't know. Call pumping, this is another interesting dynamic. Essentially, there's a lot of charges that are levied from one carrier to the next, various CLECs, different services, and call pumping basically is sort of like it can result in a Ddos effect, but they're perpetrating automated calls for the purposes of getting long distance charges and other charges paid for. And again, contact centers have been big targets of this in various communities over the years. And there's various techniques sometimes to linger in the IVR, for example. The longer they stay, the larger the charges and things like that. So it's surprising how much of that activity is done as well. Classic toll fraud, which has been around in lots of iterations over the years. It's still alive and well and easier to perpetrate in the SIP world. A lot of folks argue that it's not as big of an issue because voice calls are so cheap nowadays, but it's still a real concern. There are Say that again a little louder.
You say it's cheap, not when I can set up a 976 number in an hour for $100 and then induce people to call to it through multiple levels of call regression.
Exactly right. Yeah, that's another one of the techniques in the call pumping world.
That was coming back in the
Yeah, and it's much easier to do now, of course. So, the kind of the final pitch I wanted to throw out here is the Department of Homeland Security, their SNT, Science and Technology Group, has a cybersecurity research arm that is, last year they placed $80 million worth of research monies out in the market. I think their budget is going down a little bit in some of those arenas this year, this coming year, but they're also talking about adding some other spaces, areas of interest. We have several projects that are currently underway that we have hired a couple of folks for and forming our research team. And again, we are looking for probably a couple more folks in the next few months. And we're doing research in these areas. One of the really hot topics is we actually, good old San Antonio again, we organized a robocall task force with a number of the carriers, a large number of other general companies that are in this space, and FCC and FTC and DHS some months ago, and help prove some concepts that you could in fact mitigate some of the attacks that were going on associated with 911 and some other things. In particular, the Irs Scam was part of the project. It was really interesting. I won't go into all the detail, but we essentially organized an effort with the carriers to experiment with, was it really possible to block the Irs Scam calls that, I don't know how familiar you are with that, but it was costing a lot of people a lot of money. A lot of old folks were getting whacked, fraud committed against them, costing them thousands of dollars. And I forget the numbers now on the number of complaints that came into the FTC and the FCC and whatnot. But we were actually the little organization in San Antonio that got all these folks organized around this effort. Now the carriers, Verizon in particular played a really major role because they had technical abilities to do things none of us were authorized to do. But what came out of that was a validation for the idea that this problem set is solvable. There are things you can do to mitigate this kind of fraud perpetrated across phone calls. And that model was so successful that it spawned some funding from DHS to take it to the next level. So that's some of the work that we're doing that is getting pretty exciting. And one simple theme there is to really solve the spoofing problem. It's a big problem to solve. We think we have a path to get there that we're very excited about, but again, it's a multi-year effort. Our strength as a company is we have a technology base with which to enforce policy. The challenge we have is figuring out when and where and how to enforce what policy. And that's a lot of the research work that we're doing here to be able to detect spoof calls. This is an interesting idea here, authenticating callers. Authentication, as we know in the cybersecurity world, has been a central theme for decades. Out of all of the things that you do in the cybersecurity world to try and mitigate activity, your end goal is always, if you had a mechanism for identifying and authenticating a particular individual, that they were really who they said they were, and you can match that up with the privilege levels that they have within the environment. If you truly are able to authenticate that activity, you solve the problem. All the things that we do try and ultimately result in letting someone who is authorized to do something that they're authorized to do, let them do that without interference. And it's a hard problem to solve. Well, in the voice world, that's part of our research, as well as how do you authenticate a call, and when they say, hey, Mr. Sutterfield, we see you're calling from an authorized number, how can we make sure that they actually know that? Because they don't right now. They rely upon that as a false indicator. And that's bad for me. So, you had a question?
I'm just curious, I assume like everybody else in here, every login I have for a web login is set up to back authentication. And I was wondering if you had any case stories or solutions for preventing, because the main way I have two-factor authentication is the basic way is send a text message to your phone. And I've heard some horror stories about people calling the cell phone company and saying that that's their cell phone, and now they have my two-factor authentication. Do you have any case studies there?
So could you say that again, just like, I know it took like 5 minutes, but could you like say it again for the people who couldn't hear you in the back? Yeah.
So the question this young man asked, which was about using a phone device, a known phone device as a second factor authentication There have been some small-scale attacks on individuals by calling up their cellular or telephone provider and transferring the number to either a new hard circuit or a new SIM chip or the like to intercept the second factor text message. More recently, in the last few weeks, last month or so, there was a successful exploitation on SS7, which is a telephony switching protocol for routing calls between telcos or within a large fabric, and that has in fact reduced trust in a telephony device as a second factor, especially considering that the phone number is definitionally well known and it's something you do give out to people. Everyone you meet in the party, the phone number. Call me, I hope you're somewhere else. So what you can expect to see in the coming months and years, it most likely coming out of both IAD and DHS as well as some standards bodies, is a shift to offline and cryptographically secure second factors, such as one-time passwords that are generated on an offline device, or not necessarily offline, but a device that can run offline, doesn't require communication, to agree upon the next value, and you'll see more people turning towards cryptographically secure AI-based authentication. If you want an example of one that is very successful, as long as you ignore the first 2 to 3 years, is CAC, which is used throughout FedGov as your primary source of authentication. And that's a PKI-based authenticator. One's got a virtual.
You know, the other dynamic part of what we're doing too is for any given call from any given platform, there's a great deal of information that exists in many different places associated with that call. And so providing that real-time context that's part of the research, that's part of what we're doing, what we call our authentication engine. The idea here is that you're going to have many different authentication mechanisms that will be in use in many different environments in many different ways over the years. It's constantly evolving. In fact, I don't know if you saw some of the recent requests. I think it was Citigroup or Bank of America that was bragging about the fact that they had over 1 million Asian customers who had established their voice signature as an authentication mechanism into their IVR environment. And of course, you know, there's increasing numbers of tools out there that you can literally record someone's conversation, a general conversation for about 30 seconds to 2 minutes, and just have a recording of anyone. And you can now take that voice and generate anything that you want, and it's almost undetectable right now, and it's going to improve. You know, in just the next couple of years, it will probably be completely indiscriminate. So you can grab his voice and have him say anything you want on your phone number at any time of the day or night worldwide. And that's really what's going on. So part of what we're doing in addition to the kind of authentication mechanisms that clearly have a role to play in certain environments, we're also part of the research which we call authentication is as that call occurs off of that platform, if you collect enough of the right data and analyze it quick enough in those few seconds, you can provide probably a very high level of confidence in that call being authentic call from you from your phone or not. Kind of a red green kind of thing. Now we're doing that kind of work for, in particular, financial organizations inside your contact center, right? And literally their analysts, as they're talking, they get a little green light. This is really no kidding. In Sutterfield, so don't bother anymore. But okay. Or you might get a red light saying, we don't know. There's a couple of indicators here that does not fit within what we think that call would look like with this phone. So don't trust it. So that puts you into a different channel of things. But still, it's working. We think that that kind of function, that authentication engine, decision-making, real-time kind of function is going to be foundational to the whole authentication issue long-term for everything. There will be other places where you use other mechanisms, but that general decision engine is going to be around for a while.
So I'm not super well educated on how our telephone infrastructure works necessarily, but could you just explain a little bit how, in terms of speaking of cell phone numbers and things like that, how is that, like what part of our infrastructure makes it possible to completely spoof a cell number or phone number?
Well, right now with the advent of SIP as a protocol environment, you no longer just have phone numbers, right? All your IP addresses. And it's taken a lot of technically how you spoof it can come in many different ways. One of the slides that I passed up there earlier was an actual little hardware platform that was kind of an old platform that literally allowed you to automate calls, and they had, I believe that's one they had set up that randomly generate numbers that fit within parameters of a valid number. Knowing if you do that, the odds are high that you're going to end up spoofing a real number. So there's random ways of doing that. I don't know if you want to speak to that.
Like one thing is called Spoof Card. You speak a little louder. You can subscribe to a company called Spoof Card, get a subscription. So that you call them, they'll relaunch your call, voice over IP with any source number you want. On a larger scale, you can go out and go out.
another interesting thing, and the carriers too, is when we have been told by a number of them, acknowledged that a great deal of the volume of the calls that occur over the network that they get paid for are entirely loaded calls. There's a lot of calls shouldn't be happening. Well, they're not incentive. So they have this combination of things. From a legal perspective, they are obligated to transfer information. That's what, that's why they're there. But at the same time, they're quite happy with that. They don't have a charter to block calls.
If they make content decisions of any sort, they lose common carrier status, and as such, they become responsible for every conversation crossing the network, which will rush them in and out.
There is a role to play by the carriers as soon as they can do, but they have big limitations. Part of what we're doing as a company, we think we have architecture that lives longer term that enable the carrier to do what they do, and we can empower the customer to use it to do what they need to do to filter and mitigate a lot of these issues. And I think you're going to see more and more of that kind of capability delivered as basically a cloud service that allows the carriers to remain common carriers. But the onus is on the enterprise to protect themselves at some level. We think there's a role for folks like us and others to provide that as a service. There's not a clean way, any other clean way to do this. Because the carriers are really bound by, and they're going down the path of wanting to solve some of these issues, because we think a lot of it will be for the Irs Scam. But in the end, there's only so much that we can do.
So for traditional what other types of information what other information do you have access to?
Data analysis going on. Firm home takes a recording per minute, and the putative initial location. So if your nanny says you're coming from 210, which would be San Antonio and surrounding, and it's 5 p.m., but it picks up background noise that includes accents from, let's say, from China, where it would be early in the morning, breakfast time, and it picks up in Mandarin for breakfast. Those are all hints that it uses to make scoring decisions. It's not perfect. It's hard. Well on the spectrum the other direction is perfect, but because it is one of the hardest problems, they are kind of really innovative, and it's still not great.
So it's a big problem. And a lot of that is not only just background noise, but it's the actual noise signal used by the equipment, the telephone equipment, all this is the initial microwave link is going to establish a signal. And you're going to know that this particular signal comes from a set of microwave links where it has a unit. And yet it says it's a 210 area. And that's part of what Amazon does. controls that communication. There's a lot of companies out there like this called Trust ID. You're a carrier, and they actually do a bit inside the carrier network for a call that you want on. They are providing the service to a number of things on a customer. And so trusted, we hold the call. There's a number of things that go on. The bottom line is, in the early stage of the call, we're doing some things, and then we're doing a bit to validate this call, wireline call, and it is coming from the wireline that it says it is. And that comes back to the agreement for the manuals. They process how many calls a day? We're going to go wrap up here. Okay, we're running very long for this. Sorry. Really good discussion. If anybody has any other questions, obviously you see we're involved in some research. We're excited about some of the progress we're making there. So if anybody wants to engage with us in any form or fashion, customer discussing issues, we're here. Thank you very much for your time.
All right, cool. That's fine. It's the end anyways. All right, does anyone have any kind of questions for Lee before we break today? All right.
Great discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for everyone who participated in that discussion, and thank you all for being here once again. I do want to let you know that if you're not aware of it, SAB Sides is going to be happening on May 20th at St. Mary's University. Tickets are $10, so you can go to I think it's sabsides.com and you can find more information there. I'll put the link on our meetup page as well.
It's so much better venue than BAMC.
It's a much better venue than BAMC, ladies and gentlemen, so definitely a reason to go. Yes? With meetup.com? Potentially. I usually just go to the HTTPS anyways. And when you do that, usually your browser will say, okay, this is a secure site, I'm just going to cache that. So even if you do go to HTTP, it's going to redirect you anyways to HTTPS. Oh, it's so normally that happens to me a lot with my Mac, but that's because every time I start my Mac up, I'm in 2040. Usually that means the certificates are bad at that point. But I think that just might be an issue with your local box. Does anyone else have that issue with Meetup that you have like a certificate error? You do as well? Yeah. Okay. So, I don't know. Yeah, report to Meetup. We're just users, man. Cool, but Go Code SA. Yeah, gocodesa.com. They're doing a codeathon that's going to be start at the Geekdom Event Center, go on to CodeUp. So if you're interested in software development and you want to win thousands of dollars, I guess this is the prize pool, feel free to go to it and check it out. Not you, Alex. You're way too good for it. Any other questions or any other like events or any kind of cool stuff going on? What's that? Also May 20th. So it's either B-Sides or Codeathon. You can choose. Well, I'm doing both, but yeah. I could be in two places at once. Quantum physics, bro, get on my level. So, anybody else have any kind of questions? Is anyone out here doing the Codeathon? I know you have to volunteer. You don't have to. You can go as an individual as well. You can be a team of one. All right, so we'll go ahead and break. Please feel free to get more pizza and water. And many thanks to Secure Logics and to Lee for coming in. Let's give him one more round of applause, please.